Ed Rush is being investigated for targeting Arizona's Sean Miller, teeing him up during the Pac-12 conference game against conference tournament game against UCLA. The man who broke the story, Jeff Goodman from CBS Sports, joining us on the program. When did you get the tip about this, Jeff?
Probably about 10 days ago, maybe. I was in Auburn Hills for the first and second round of the NCAA, or the second and third round, of the NCAA tournament, and I got the tip on it back then, and I've been kind of running a little bit, from site to site since, and trying to work it, trying to get some refs to talk on the record. Obviously, they're not going to do that because if they want to work in the Pac-12. And Ed Rush is the coordinator of officials, they're not going to get work. So they're not going on the record, but I did talk to one off the record who gave me those comments that were rather alarming, obviously, about, Ed Rush telling – there were 7 refs in the room that first night on Thursday and saying that he'd give them $5,000 or a trip to Cancun if they either hit him with a technical or ran him, throwing him out of the game. And not by coincidence, I don't think, Sean Miller gets a tech the next night in a close game, Pac-12 semifinal game against UCLA. I was there. And honestly, I looked at it and I said, wow, that was about as quick a hook as I've ever seen a coach get. And the ref that I spoke to off the record said, absolutely, those comments played into the fact that Michael Irving, the ref who did hit Sean Miller, the fact that he hit him with that technical. He hit him quick, and I talked to about 5 or 6 people after the game that said Sean Miller did not use any profanities after what was a bad call, too, to boot.
Okay, Ed Rush says he was kidding. The Pac-12, Larry Scott, the commissioner, said that he was kidding. Okay, maybe on Thursday, I don't know, did you ask these people, was everybody laughing when he said, I'll give you $5,000 or a trip to Cancun? But then
they're scared of him, Dan.
But
they're all scared of him. So they're not laughing. They're like, you know what, this guy's throwing his weight around, a former NBA ref for years, former head of officiating in the NBA. The refs I talked to, they're all scared of him.
Okay, you reiterated on Friday after your great joke on Thursday, and then all of a sudden this plays out in real time, that you get Sean Miller who gets teed up. But is there some kind of relationship with Ed Rush and Sean Miller? Why Sean Miller? Why are you going out of your way to tee up him?
Well, I think it's a guy that certainly, he speaks his mind. He's not overly concerned. So I think he's emotional. Like some of the other coaches in the league are probably more passive.
Yeah, but he didn't get a technical the entire season.
All year, I know. I think part of it was he was going out of the box. He was probably, and I think a lot of coaches, in their defense these days, in the refs' defense, a lot of coaches are talking to refs way too much in college basketball. They are. But is that any reason to do this? No. Ed Rush should be fired, to be honest, for what he did, whether it's in jest or not. You don't do that stuff, especially in the wake of all the Tim Donaghy stuff a few years ago.
Sean Miller got fined $25,000.
Yes, he did, didn't he?
Has he already paid that fine?
He already paid the fine, from what I'm told. And the other thing I'm told is that, how about this? The ref, Michael Irving, Lute Olson called me last night, former Arizona head coach, and he said, by the way, just so you know, Michael Irving, the ref who hit Sean with a technical, worked all 3 Arizona-UCLA games this year, all 3 of them.
25,000 is a lot of trips to Cancun here. Does he get that money back? And has anybody checked Michael Irving passport or bank account here?
I don't think so. I wonder if Irving's got that trip to Cancun already lined up or anything like that. Again, I don't think it was real. But again, you can't even put that in refs' heads about the fact that there's pressure. Now you're thinking you've got the human element in every call you're going to make. And how about from here on out? I mean, every call that Arizona is going to deal with, any close call either way, you're going to have people question right now the integrity of that call and just to the game when you hear things like this.
Okay, Larry Scott, who's the head of the Pac-12, said that they had concluded their investigation. I'm wondering, if you don't break the story, does this story ever get out?
No, never. I don't think so. Listen, and his comments, which were basically that he made it in jest and everything like that, and the investigation's basically closed, were prior to my story. So he had not seen the off-the-record quotes that the referee said to me, which I thought were pretty damning. I mean, think about it. That's not Michael Irving's mentality as a ref. He's a really good ref and manages situations without using technicals. It was absolutely because of what was said in the meeting. There's no doubt in my mind it's a bad position to put us in. He's right. He's right. If you want to get games, if you want to get work, you got to do what Ed Rush is basically telling you to do. Otherwise, you know what? Those refs that are repping that Arizona game, and if Sean Miller's yelling and screaming and coming outside the box, you might not get work from here on out.
Talking to Jeff Goodman from CBS Sports. USC gets their man, Andy Enfield, leading Florida Gulf Coast, which is kind of interesting if you consider they barely made the tournament, then all of a sudden captured the nation here. You got your up-tempo style, which is what UCLA wanted. If Andy Enfield has more of a resume, is Andy Enfield the coach at UCLA?
I'm not sure he should be the coach at USC, Dan, to be honest. I mean, listen to this. Pat Hayden fires Kevin O'Neill back, I believe it was January 14th. That's 2.5 months ago. He hires a guy he had never heard of 2 weeks ago, Andy Enfield. Nobody had heard of him. I mean, I knew him because he was an assistant at Florida State, but nobody knew Andy Enfield. The last time something like this was done, Dan, and I'm going to write this later today, was Keno Davis. He won at Drake. Remember, he got in the NCAA tournament. They beat Western Kentucky on a last-second shot. Providence hired him, and it was a complete train wreck. I know this guy won 2 games. He had a fun team to watch, fun style. To my knowledge, he has no ties to L.A. Zero. I just don't know if this is going to end well.
Better hire, USC or UCLA?
UCLA. To me, I think, again, Steve Alford, I talked to a bunch of AU coaches out there. They really like him. They really like Steve Alford. Is he arrogant? Sure, absolutely. I think you have to be, though, at a place like UCLA. He's just got to understand how to deal with all the key people in L.A. Ben Howland never got that. Plus, when Ben Howland was there at the end of the tenure, there was no talent in L.A. It's loaded right now. You or I could recruit in L.A. right now. There's that much talent coming out of California, whether it's Southern California or Northern California. Steve Alford will be fine. Andy Enfield, I just don't know.
Well, I will say this, though, USC, they need to do Real Housewives of USC. And then you get Lane Kiffin's wife, Andy Enfield, and then whoever else in there. And I think you got, put it on the Pac-12 network.
That's the best recruiting idea I've ever heard for USC.
We got Greg Marshall on. The fact that he keeps winning, was he considered for UCLA? The fact that they're here at the Final Four, that he didn't get a job because of that?
Isn't it crazy that in L.A., think about it, he won, he got to the Final Four in L.A.,
yeah,
and didn't get UCLA or USC with both ADs watching him. I think part of what rubs people the wrong way about Greg Marshall, when you ask around about him, a lot of people don't like him in the industry. I like him. He's fun. If you just had him on, he says what's on his mind. He doesn't worry, but he rubs a lot of people the wrong way. So I think when you start asking questions about him, and that's why he didn't get a job down at South Carolina or Clemson, where he's from. I mean, he was at Winthrop and dominated for years, and he couldn't really get a sniff at South Carolina or Clemson. So I think that probably hurt him at the end of the day. And UCLA was probably far enough along with Steve Alford, and they figured that was a little bit bigger name at the time. But I might have waited. And Greg Marshall and Steve Alford, the only difference is Steve Alford probably doesn't have the same sort of recruiting ties that Steve Alford already had in place in California.
Good to visit with you, Jeff. Great stuff.
Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Jeff Goodman, CBS Sports.